Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. Today we are going to be continuing on with the 1890s summer dress project, which the skirt is right here. So I was having quite a hard time trying to decide what type of bodice to make. I know that I already couldn't decide if I wanted an Edwardian bodice or an 1890s bodice. Well then, when it came to choosing the actual 1890s bodice, it was still a hard decision. So if you follow me on Instagram, which is at Lady Rebecca Fashions, then you probably know that I polled the audience. I polled all of you guys to see which bodice I should make between these two bodices because I love both of them so much. And honestly, the one with the fluffy ruffled sleeves was a clear winner. It was 60% to about 30%. But the thing is that I feel like that bodice is a little bit more similar to what I'm going to wind up doing for the Edwardian bodice in that it doesn't have a fitted bodice. It's almost more of a shirt waist. It's very blousy. And I wanted something that was much more distinguishable from the Edwardian bodice. But the thing about the other bodice is I feel like a lot of people were kind of drawn away from the big velvet collar, and to be honest, I wasn't sure I loved the big velvet collar either. So last night I had a stroke of genius or, whatever, and I decided that I could come up with a hybrid between the two bodices, combine them together, and wind up with this. And I am so excited for this design. It really takes the fitted bodice structure of the one with the big old green collar and takes the sleeves and everything of the other bodice and combines them together to get the best of both worlds. So I'm super, super excited about this bodice plan. The other thing that's exciting about this fitted bodice style is that it is honestly really similar to a lot of the 1890s bodices that I've examined on this channel, which if you are interested in seeing any videos on examining the antique bodices, I will link that playlist down below. It's a monthly series on my channel, so I do a new antique garment, whether that's a bodice or a dress or etc., every month. So do check that out if you're at all interested in that. But I'm going to take what I've learned from those bodices now, which is a lot of those hidden side closures and everything like that. I'm going to take that knowledge and put it into this bodice, which I'm quite excited about. And the nice thing is that there is already a pattern out there that is kind of similar. It doesn't have everything that I want, but it has that hidden bodice closure. It has kind of a ruched front. It has the puffy sleeve with the fitted sleeve, and that is the black snail bodice pattern. So that's for an 1890s day bodice or blouse. It's their pattern number 0420, this one right here. And I got this a while ago. They were having some sort of a sale months ago, and I purchased it, really excited to make it, and then it just kind of sat there and I haven't put it together or anything. So this is a humongous pattern. Like, there's a lot of pages of this pattern. So that means that the first thing that I have to do is tape together all of the pages of this pattern to figure out exactly what's going on here, what do I need, etc. So let's go ahead and tape this pattern together. In case you've never used a printed home pattern, let me do just a quick thing of showing you how they work, by the way. I have 4 pages already put together. This is a 5th one here. I love the black snail patterns, printed home patterns. I think they are some of the best out there. They've got such a great way to line everything up with these X's. And then they also have like the dotted lines going around the outside here. So that is where you cut. You cut on the dotted line, so you can see right here, I've cut it already, but I've left it here so that you can see what it looks like. And then once you cut it, take that away, you are going to line that up with the other dotted line. So it does get a little bit trickier when you start adding in like corners when you already have a few pieces cut out, but because of these X's, it winds up pretty darn clear. You want to just line up those X's, and then if there's other lines like these lines, for example, you will line those up as well as the X's. I am doing this through the camera right now, and I'm not going to tape it in place until I'm not holding the camera because I want to make sure I'm really exact. You don't want to get off at all, but these black snail ones, again, they're super, super good. And what you're going to wind up with eventually is something that looks like this. So This one again has a ton of pages. This is just the first one. There's also going to be this one and this one. There's a ton of pages. I don't actually need this shape, but unfortunately I do need this one and this one. This is the upper sleeve, so my sleeve's gonna be ruffles. But I have a lot of taping in my future, obviously. When you print these at home too, you're going to wind up with some that are like to scale, so you just want to make sure that you're actually printing the right scale on your printer. I printed these a long time ago, so I can't show you that part of it, but they all printed fine for me. My printer just automatically printed them to scale. And now the key thing here, I do not recommend taping all of this together at once. You're just not going to have enough room on your table. It won't fit. So what I do is I tape until I get to a complete piece. So for this one, unfortunately, that means it's going to be a bunch of pages together because this piece is so long. So this is going to actually wind up being 4 pages together plus the ones over here, because I'll go across and then I'll start adding in and going down and across, just so that I keep my numbers. Each page is numbered, just so that I keep them in order. But as soon as I get to a complete piece, I cut that piece out. Get it out of the way. That way you don't have to worry about it taking up your entire table. So I'm gonna have a bunch to put together before I start cutting out, but it's not too terrible. I would assume with a big skirt pattern it's a lot worse, but I, again, don't really like skirt patterns, so I'm just doing this with the bodice. So I'm going to keep on taping and then I will get to cutting out. So I'm finally ready to cut out my mock-up of the pattern. I'm just taking the pieces that are the lining pieces here because they're pretty much, with the exception of the front piece, they're completely different pieces. And I've taken all of these, and on this one, I've drawn in where my outer piece will be as opposed to where they had it, which is this straight dotted line right here. So I've drawn that bit in for a little later. I've also realized that I'm pretty sure I need to lengthen the waist. The front was showing me that I needed to lengthen it by about 1.25 inches. The back was originally actually more, but that just, like, I rarely need to lengthen backs, so that threw me off. So I'm gonna lengthen all of them by 1.25 inches between basically like where the underarm is and the waist. That's where it's going to get lengthened. And I am going to go ahead, I don't actually need this one for the mock-up. I'm gonna go ahead and cut out the rest of these pieces here, just in some probably old sheets, and see if we're at all close. So what I've decided is that I'm going to wear my Edwardian corset with this bodice instead of my 1870s corset that I usually wear for 1890s, because I don't have an 1890s corset. The one thing about this corset is that it is meant to go with my ruffly corset cover, and this is my other corset cover, and it does not fit over this corset. This is not stretchy at all, and where this band of lace is, it doesn't close. So we're gonna have to make do for now, and maybe I will make a new corset cover or figure out something to do, but I don't think I want the ruffly corset cover under the 1890s bodice. The reason that I went with this corset as opposed to the other corset is so that I could wear the same corset with both versions of this bodice, since I am still intending to make the Edwardian version. So I have my mock-up here. I just realized I left all of the pins in it and haven't pressed the seam yet, so I'm going to press that seam first, but it is all sewn together and I am not really sure how well it's gonna fit. One thing that I didn't mention before is that my waist is actually one size smaller than the rest of everything on this pattern. However, since I'm really not familiar with how black snail patterns fit, I just decided to cut a standard size as opposed to take it in at the waist, and I figured I could take it in at the waist now. So I'm gonna press that seam and then we're gonna see what this bodice looks like. So overall, for a pattern whose pattern company I've never even used before, I'm actually pretty darn impressed. I am obviously having a major arm's eye issue right here. Like, that is the biggest thing that I can feel. I literally can't move my arms more forward than this because these arm sizes are cut so far out. And that is not a fit issue, I think, with me. That is an issue with the pattern, because when you look at the pattern cover, you can see just how widely set the shoulders are, and I'm not sure why they did that, because I'm pretty darn sure in the 1890s you should have your sleeves here, not here, because otherwise your puffs there's nothing supporting them. So yeah, should be here. So that's like, God, like an inch and a half too far out. I mean, it's a big difference. It's literally inhibiting my mobility. So that is the biggest thing there. The other thing is exactly as I expected, which is that the waist is too big. So you can see it here in the front, it's too large. It's also a little too large in the back, like right in here. So I've just got to take those in at the seams. By the way, whenever you're doing a bodice mock-up, you might notice that my bodice is on inside out. I highly recommend when you're doing your mock-ups to put your bodice on inside out, unless it is something where you have like a directional sort of thing, like a crossover or something like that. It's so much easier to fit your bodice if it's on inside out, because then you have access to all of those seams. So like with me right now, I could literally just take my darts, take the seams, etc., and pin out additional space or additional, you know, fabric. I can just pin them out and make them smaller, and then I don't have to worry about like, oh, well, I pinned it, but it's like an inside out pin and then I have to transfer it and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, do this. This pattern, I believe, it meets edge to edge. It was kind of a little hard to discern from the directions. Granted, I skimmed them, I did not read them, but I was hoping for something that would like say maybe on the bodice piece itself that it meets edge to edge. The section where it talks about hooks and eyes, it talks about the alternating kind, and I'm fairly certain you can only do that where it meets edge to edge. The reason that it's okay that it is meeting edge to edge is because there is a plastron right here with that gathered section, and so that is the front that like is the false front that covers over these hooks and eyes right here. So because it's edge to edge, I just pinned out what I eyeballed to be about 5/8 inch. This works with 5/8 inch seam allowances. And so I eyeballed that and pinned that out, and that way it's just my seam allowance. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and do the fitting of the waist. First, I'm gonna cut these arm size so that I can actually move, and then I'm going to do the fitting at the waist. And honestly, I think that's about all I have to do. So again, super excited with how this is fitting, considering I've never used even a black snail pattern before. I like this. Okay, so I made a couple of changes, the big one being I cut off all of that excess armscye. Also, Lion is squeaking literally just outside the door here, so there's that. Anyway, the arm size are so much better now. I have that range of motion. All I really did was this. So I cut this whole bit off. Then there's also the 5/8 inch seam allowance. So it was less than I expected really, but yeah, that was right here. It was really holding me back. Anyway, so I did that, and then I also took in on these darts, I took in, I think that's about 3/8 of an inch right at the waist on these darts here. And on the back, I took it in pretty significantly. I haven't actually looked at it to measure it yet, but these seams right here, they're pretty significantly taken out, and then I have tapered them up as far as I need them to go. And the one other change that I made was actually to the corset a little bit. I started looking at my silhouette of how it looked before, and I was like, it really doesn't look right. The bust just looks so low. And not only am I wearing the Edwardian corset, but I was also having the bust padding in the Edwardian corset, which the bust padding sits really under the bust. It sits about right here. And this corset is built to go over the bust padding, so it does bow out a little bit right here, but that was one of the reasons why I couldn't close the corset cover earlier, was because the bust padding was like right where the corset cover could not close. So I took out the bust padding, and I'm still a little waffling about maybe I should actually wear the 1870s corset instead, and I may try that at some point, but I think that this is a much better silhouette now. The bust is sitting up higher. It's giving me a really like well-defined ratio bust to waist to hip, and the skirt will sit at the natural waist, so the hip really doesn't matter as far as the bodice fit, because that's going to tuck in, but I'm definitely liking this silhouette a lot better without that bust padding. And I was able to close the corset cover, which I think the corset cover actually is almost helping to hold in some of the lower part of the bust gusset right there, because the bust gusset on this corset starts like here. It's so low because the bust is meant to be so low. So anyway, I'm super happy with where this mock-up is. It's not really the end of the mock-up journey for this bodice. I mean, first off, yeah, I have to sew the places where I've pinned it. But secondly, this bodice has almost an entirely different layer over the top. And one of the elements that I am going to attempt to do with this bodice is, if you've seen my recent video examining the 1890s huge sleeved antique bodice, you will know that it has a great little fan pleat looking back in the center back, and I just love that so much and really want to incorporate that into this bodice, whereas this bodice calls for just like kind of two little pleat darts. Like, they're not stitched down, they're just stitched in one place, and then they're loose, and it just looks bulky and wrong, and whereas the other ones were top stitched and look so graceful. So I really want to try to do that for one thing. The other thing is that I am changing the shape of the plastron area in the front with all of that shirring. So that was that line that I showed you on the pattern earlier, but basically I'm going to make it so that the plastron starts more like out here instead of, I think it starts here on this pattern. I'm going to make it start here, and I'm going to have it taper in to almost together at the waist. It'll probably be about 2 inches wide, if that, at the waist. So I think all of that needs to happen while I'm still in the mock-up stage. I'm not positive, like part of me wants to start assembling, but I feel like it would be better to mock that up. So anyway, I'm going to the Ren Fair. I'm hoping that when I come back, I will be able to work on some of that exterior mock-up stuff. But again, I'm super happy where we are currently with the base of the mock-up. I was expecting so many more fitting issues, and I'm so glad that it wasn't. So hey, check out Black Snail Patterns. I will link this pattern down below, and I have to say, totally recommend it. I mean, it was wide on the arm side, but everything else, like, wow, it fits exactly like it said it would. I mean, I lengthened the bodice like I knew I would have to. I took in the waist like I knew I would have to. That's it. So just really quickly, I wanted to show you the difference in where these seams were originally supposed to be and where they are now for me. So this is the center back side seam. Like, this right here is the very center back because it's on the fold. So this is the seam closest to that center back. And this orange line and now this stitch line, that's where I am doing it. It was just kind of this straight thing right here. Now I have sway back, and so this I think is basically just a sway back adjustment here. And honestly, I probably could have tapered it up even a little bit more because I do feel like there maybe is a little extra room right here, but not enough that it's bothering me at all. So I'm just going to keep it down here. And then the other alteration that I did was to the dart. So originally I just put in the darts as it says on the pattern, but I am curvier than that. So, and I knew that my waist was going to be smaller than this pattern size. So this is what I did with the dart. You can see the new stitch line here. And when I do stuff like this, I mean, yes, technically it's going to be different on both sides, but I would rather just kind of make it the same and see how that goes. So I pinned it while I was wearing it, then I drew it in where the pins were, then I matched the two sides together, kind of averaging out that curve, and then I sewed along that new matched line. So that's where that is. I'm going to cut off the excess of this seam, and that way I can translate that to the paper patterns. But otherwise, I'm going to try and mock up the new back tomorrow. So these are the other two pieces that I'm mocking up here. This is the back, the exterior back, and I kind of like fiddled with it a bit. Now, remember, I've taken in the interior back side seams, whatever seam that was. I took those in quite a bit. So I was trying to figure out how to get, this is supposed to be the only original pleat on this back. I was trying to figure out how to get more. The other thing I don't like about this back piece that I haven't really figured out, to be honest, is that they actually have you cut the exterior back and then just like slit it open so that it looks like that, where you can see the interior underneath. I really don't like that, but I haven't figured out how to avoid that, other than the fact that like my extant one only goes to the waist. It doesn't go past the waist like this does. So I might just cut it off and avoid that. In any case, what I have figured out here is that because I wound up taking in the waist before, I thought I was maybe going to need to add more this way, but I kind of did like a test pleat with some fabric and found out that frankly, this is hopefully going to be just fine, I think, for the amount that I can do 3 little tuck pleat things and like stitch those in place. And then I am going to add the 1.25 for the length, but that is it for the back. I did also cut off the shoulder like a tiny bit. It wound up being only about a 1/4 inch smaller by the time it got to the shoulder seam. So I've already cut that in. That is that orange line that you see there. And I cut that off of both this piece and the interior back piece where the shoulder is. I already did that. So the other piece that has major alterations is the plastron base on the inside. So there's a plastron base and there's an exterior, and the exterior is what gets ruched up. This is just the base for it, but that's what I need to mock up first. Then I probably need to do the other one anyway. So this one, it's going to really change shape because of what I've done to the bodice. So we are going to move this 1 7/8 inches that way, as in add to there, and then go up 5/8 inch this way, because for some reason this was exactly meeting the shoulder seam and there wasn't any seam allowance, and I think it was because of the way it was tapered out. I'm just adding that in. I might remove that later. And then I have tapered in this edge significantly. So this is what it looked like before. There's all of that I'm taking out to get that nice little pointed waist look. I'm adding in the 1.25 inches of length. And then I've also just like folded this so that I only have to deal with one side. I'm just gonna cut it on the fold. So yeah, that's all my alterations there. I'm really not sure what all is going on facing wise up here yet, and they're supposed to be facing on one side of this yet. I will cross that bridge when I come to it, but it doesn't feel important for a mock-up. So I'm going to mock these two up out of more of the pink sheets, and then see about maybe doing the shirred layer in like a super lightweight fabric, but I don't know that I have a super lightweight fabric that I can use for mock-up, so I might just have to try that in the pile of Swiss dot. So I think I have figured out the back piece here. I cut everything out and then I went and I pinned, well actually first I undid this seam on the inner structure of the bodice, and then I pinned it up matching first at the neckline and then down the shoulders, around the arm side, down the sides until I got to there. Same with the other side. Then I matched up the center back, because I had made kind of a line here as a crease on both levels. I had matched those up, pinned that into place. And then I laid this out flat. And honestly, I wish I had like some sort of a body pillow or a body double or something to do this on, but I laid it out flat on my table and I just sort of started tucking. And it took me a couple of tries to like re-tuck it just to make sure that it went right, because I wanted 3 on each side and I wanted them approximately spaced like this. I'm still like a little uncertain if maybe they should have been slightly closer together right here, but I think that this is pretty darn close to what I wanted. So I did this side and then I kind of tried to match this side. So I did do a couple of measurements. Oh look, it's a Dora cat. Dora cat. Okay, bye Dora. Anyway, I did do a couple of measurements, like measuring from the center to here and from the side to here on this side, just so that they would match. But otherwise I just kind of eyeballed. So I think they're like, they seem a little off, as in like the waist here seems a little higher than on this side. But yeah, everything's all pinned. I think I'm going to baste it, because I can't try it on with this many pins. So I think I'm gonna baste it all into place. The two parts that I'm not sure about are, one, up here, there's still a little excess fabric. I thought it would kind of go away by up there because I thought that it was the same width across by the time it gets to here. So I'm hoping that that will kind of just fill out itself when I put it on. The other part that I'm really not sure of is here. So again, on the exterior on the pattern, they had slits here to match this up. They also didn't have this much excess. So I have a lot of excess right here on the exterior, but underneath there's like a seam here, for example, and then the seam here. So I don't know if it's going to balance or if I'm going to wind up getting like pulls. That's going to be the one thing. I mean, I guess if I have to slit it, I have to, or if I just cut it shorter, that's fine too. Because again, my extant bodice kind of does a point thing like this. And I mean, I'm fine with changing that or cutting it off entirely. This is going to be tucked in. So that's the plan. Anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and cut the center front piece. I had wanted to finish with all of this tonight because actually I'm going to a photo shoot tomorrow where I was like, oh yeah, maybe I can wear the skirt part of my Edwardian skirt and just like wear it with my Target, you know, fake Victorian blouse and a sash and a hat and stuff, 'cause it's like a vintage photo shoot. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'll wear this new skirt, except that this new skirt still doesn't have a hem and I haven't even put it on to check the hem. and I was gonna do that tonight, and it's already, I think, like almost 10 o'clock. So that photo shoot is in 12 hours and 20 minutes. Dora, what do you think? Can I do it? Can I do it? Yeah? Oh, she believes in me. So first off, as I mentioned earlier, I went to the Ren Fair today, so this is why my hair is like this, because I thought it was cute. So I decided to just keep it for the rest of the day. So yeah, I've been wearing fake braids in my hair all day. Anyway, so I have the bodice on, obviously. I have the front plastron on. I'm not exactly positive that it's right. Like, I like the lines of it, the shape of it, I think is what I'm going for. But there's a weird thing happening, particularly in this area right here, where it is gapping. Now, the bodice, like the rest of the bodice exterior, will lap over the plastron, so that's probably okay, because honestly I could probably just run a gathering stitch and then it would be like under there and that'd be okay. And I think that it's just because it's a straight line over a bust, so it happens. But yeah, it's a little funky there. It also feels like it's maybe twisted. So what I had done at first was I had drawn lines on the under bodice piece for where I thought the plastron was going to end up, and I pinned it in place on one of those lines. But then I put it on and like it was way closer to one dart than it was to the other dart, so I figured it's wrong. So I unpinned it while I was wearing it and just like eyeballed it and pinned it. So it could be that I literally pinned one side higher than the other. I don't know, but I think that this is good enough to go off of. This is going to be cut out of the same fabric as the lining, same with the rest of the bodice or interlining. I'm hoping that I have enough cotton sateen that I can do it all out of cotton sateen. I would rather not do it out of twill because this is a summer bodice and I want it to be like as lightweight as possible. Those are the two that I tend to use for interiors, is either twill or sateen. So it's going to be one of those. And I know I have enough twill, so we shall see. But yeah, that is the front of the bodice that I think is all good, which is great. Oh, though the one thing obviously is like it wound up somehow super, super long. I'm not sure if that was an issue with like maybe the original plastron versus bodice length, because I increased the length 5/8 inches up here because it didn't seem like it was going to meet in the right place, because I was bringing it more than just like match at the shoulder seam. I wanted it to go into the shoulder seam. So I brought it up that 5/8 inches for that reason, but I'm pretty sure this is more than 5/8 inches. It feels like more. I haven't measured it, but I feel like it's more than that too long. Could be wrong. And then it's also too long down here at the center front. So again, I think that this must be an issue with the original plastron versus the original bodice length, because I didn't increase it by more than I increased the bodice length. So yeah, something funky is going on there. Anyway, then we move to the back, and honestly, I'm happy with it. So I was worried about this area here, but again, it's gonna be tucked in. It's gonna be right here. And I don't think that it's throwing off anything as far as the rest of the fit in the back. Like, I don't think it's throwing off these panels right here. It is just that it is, I don't know, a little tail-like or something in the back. But I think that it's doing well, and I think it's really fitting the curves well. So I'm quite impressed with that. And I mean, I did take in the waist further than the pattern, so I did have to kind of manipulate those curves, but I'm really liking how the seams look in the back. I think it's super flattering, and it's exactly how I wanted it to come out. It's exactly based on that 1890's bodice that I just examined in that video. So very, very happy with how similar it is to that. So yeah, I am ready to cut out the actual fabric. I'm not going to mock up the shirred portion on this yet. I just don't think there's really a point in mocking that up until I know for sure that the base is good. And I think the shirred portion, I mean, I'm going to use what they have, and then I'm just going to make it wider so that it is more intensely shirred. And that should get me exactly what I want. So all of that though is going to be in next week's video, because it is now Saturday night, so it is the end of this week's vlog. Next week I will be cutting into the actual fabric for the lining and ideally the exterior and assembling. Maybe I'll even get to sleeves. That would be really awesome. We'll have to see how that goes. But Again, I'm like super impressed with this pattern, super happy with the minimal amount of changes that I've had to make with this pattern. Highly recommend it, at least so far. I will link that down below. Now that said, if you are someone who really relies on pattern instructions, I don't know that I would recommend it because I have kind of read through some of the pattern instructions and they're not processing in my head. That said, I am not good with reading instructions. I'm not good with instructions, period. I can't listen to them, and in this case, if it's not clear like a simplicity pattern, I can't read them. So I'm gonna make it up myself. But I'm so used to making bodices like that it's kind of okay that I'm making it up myself. But again, if you are a beginner sewer, maybe not the best pattern for you. So anyway, I do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week with my sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and other costuming content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi account down in the description below. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon and Angela. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!